Sukrit Talks. Today we're going to be focusing on one of our main themes, which is the need for equality amongst all members of humanity. There's many cases these days we see in the news in many areas where we think that things can be done such that, people all around the world, whether they're from, no matter what race, gender, different stratifying factor we attach, no matter what kind of class or area they're from, they deserve the same access to socially valued resources. There's many things involved. So today we're sitting with an expert in this area, a person who's done a lot of amazing work in this space, Mr. Susai Benjamin. So today I'll just be talking to him about the kind of things that he's done in this space and what he believes equality to really entail. So thanks for joining us today, Mr. Benjamin. The first thing I'd like to ask is, as a person with quite a bit of experience in this space, what would you qualify equality to really be? What would you define it to be?
Look, it is a difficult concept to start with. Before I say anything more, I think I want to clarify, I'm no expert. That's the first point I want to say.
Yes.
I'm just an ordinary guy living in a suburb of Sydney. And the second thing I want to say, I'm not very, very experienced. I've got some experience, yes, but we all have experience. I mean, every human journey, every human person has got his or her own experience in the life journey they're going through.
Yes.
So we are all having a different type of experience, not the same experience.
Yes.
So each case is unique. Each case has got its own, something to learn from. So that's what it is.
Sure. So,
in terms of this defining equality you talked about.
Yes.
Now, I don't think there can be equality in or flatness of a thing. There's going to be up and down, different people, different situation, because for example, we are born into the earth, into the world, and in being born, some are naturally come with a gifted DNA, for example, and some people are not having that skill, maybe. So we are all having a different levels of intellectual ability. We all have different levels of physical ability. Mm-hmm. So that's the nature of the business. I have in the past equated that to a potter making pots, for example. Potter makes a pot.
Yeah.
In those days, I visited villages in India where they make these pots, and often some pots come out pretty well. Yeah. Some don't. So the person who's making these pots, the clay. So there used to be a wheel. There's a wheel. Then they spin it themselves and then make this design. You know what I mean? So when the thing's not coming out well, they just wipe the clay and then put it in that the mold. And then start again. So, but in human race, that's not possible. You can't, because there is an ethical question about life and whether when they know that the child is not perfect, in some countries, in some societies, they seek for abortion, and in some places for religious other reasons they say. It doesn't matter, so we will have to have the child as God's gift, and we will look after the child, what I mean? So it's got all this gradation of physical situation,
right.
Of various forms of disability. So
yes.
That's why in this country, Australia, we are now talking about national disability insurance arrangements to look after them and to protect them. So that's one issue. Then you got the intellectual problem. So,
sure.
So the point is that those who have greater intellect, greater physical strength and greater physical capacity have been created in some sense at the cost of those who do not have that. Like, I'm going back to the clay pot example. No?
Mm-hmm.
So the perfect pots are at the expense of those pots which are not perfect.
Okay.
In the production line, if you want to call it that way.
Yes.
So those who are capable, strong by physique, exceptional by intellectual capacity, so they have a moral obligation to look after those who do not.
Okay, yes.
You think you're following my thought process, yeah? So
Yes.
So we have got the state as a power. Says, okay, those who are doing well must pay tax. Those who are doing too well must pay higher tax level, because there's a tax break arrangement. If you're earning so much, there's no tax. If you're earning so much to so much, you pay that much, and so on and so forth. So the state has got a taxing regime to advance, to progress this concept I'm talking about. So those who are doing well must pay. My thinking is that the governments of the day, whether in Australia or around the world, have not explained sufficiently enough this concept of the responsibility of those who are having, greater resources, those who are born with the greater capacity of the pot-making analogy of acquired this greater skill and greater capacity. It is not as if they have got their own capacity. It is about the whole, human production process. They have come out good, better than others.
Mm-hmm.
They have got greater opportunities than others. So they have got the responsibility to look after those who are weaker and those who are suffering, those who are intellectually, physically, socially, economically, spiritually disabled,
Right,
in many ways.
So it's kind of like a collective effort, you'd say. Where
Yes. So we have got a responsibility to each other at the end of the day. But often people don't talk about it, people don't discuss it. They say, oh, you know what, I got 5 houses, so good. And I'm earning $500,000 in Australian context, oh, that's wonderful. So, but then the reality is that when that person is dying, he's not going to take the 5 houses and the $500,000 or $1 billion asset or whatever, wealth or whatever, he's not going to take that with him or her.
Yes.
So everything is left behind for someone else to look after. Or burn or destroy or misuse or abuse, whatever. So in the broad, concept, we got to see what we can do. Then you got very religious groups. They are also trying to go beyond the framework of the state as in power and laws of the state, laws of the country. Go beyond that and said, look, we need to have compassion. We need to have love for our humanity. We need to do the right thing. Doesn't matter what religion you belong to or anyone belong to. I think nearly every religion says love their neighbor, look after those who are destitutes and those who are suffering. How we can look after. But we are little stingy in that process. That is a broad concept of philanthropy.
Yes.
So how are you doing this beyond what you need to do? Recently I was at a conference in Adelaide, and so there were big billionaires on the stage, and they're all talking about their business achievements and etc. So I asked one question. I said, put my hand up, and says, oh yes, that gentleman there, he wants to ask a question. I asked a question. I said, look, what you are doing for the community, supporting the community. So one smart businessman said, oh yes, we are paying tax. We are paying all the tax required, the large sums of amount we are paying tax. So I said, please, I got a supplementary question. So what is that? I said, I'm not asking you what you pay, where you need to pay. I'm asking, what are you doing on your own, voluntarily contributing?
Yes.
So there was silence there, and then, they didn't want to answer the question and moved on. But one of those guys came and met me subsequently after the session was over, and now I am in dialogue with him, and he lives in Pimble, and he's a very rich man. And he came and met me and had a coffee with me. He said, look, tell me how I can help you and so on. So we talked about that. So what I'm saying is that we need to have the state capacity to tax the taxing regime is one element of trying to take money from those who are doing very well, and so. And then you got the religious concept of trying to give. Now, for example, if you take the Catholic Church, to which I belong, we've got a huge welfare activities. So a number of people who got wealth and don't know what to do with it. Their children have gone, or they died, or they have become superstars and they don't need the wealth. Now, a lot of those people are, bequeathing their property, their things to the church. For example, they said, take this to the church. So the church has got some asset and they're collecting money from the parishioners, the mass, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And then we are supporting from our local sort of a situation about 300 families being looked after in very many ways of food vouchers, and we collect food every Sunday, Saturday, and then there are a team of volunteers who are going distributing the food and food vouchers being given, and some money is given, etc., etc. So what I'm saying is that you are not going to get in this whole world a flat regime saying everybody's wearing everybody's got a similar house, everybody's got a similar car, everybody's got a similar dress. That's not going to happen. There's going to be variation of the situation. That's reality.
Yeah.
So within the variation of the reality in which we're living, how we can look after the less fortunate people.
Right.
With the skills, with the physique, all of those things are kind of. So it's a concept that's evolving all the time, because I think it's not easy.
Talked about kind of the moral concept of equality and how it's tough to really ensure that, like a flat regime, as you mentioned. One concept that I find quite interesting that I did want to ask you about was the idea of equality of opportunity. So I definitely agree and think that everyone would agree that it's hard to attain a level of equality in society that caters to everyone. But would you agree that something that is being driven a lot these days is this idea of equality of opportunity, such that everyone has access to education per se, or everyone has access to those socially valued resources that can allow them to make that pot in a perfect way? Would you say that that's a very important effort, or what would your perspective on that be?
Say it again, I'm lost to the idea.
Yeah,
so you're talking about,
So the idea of equality of opportunity, so let's just take education for example. Although I might not be intellectually gifted or from a poor part of the world, the idea is that I can still access this, area of society which is education, and then I can drive myself forward through that. So obviously, as people in a privileged part of the world in Australia, we all have access to education in a much easier way than someone from, say, a rural village in, India or that kind of thing. So how important do you think it is as people of the world to drive equality of opportunity to things like education, healthcare, media even, everything like that?
It's a very broad question, like for example, let's say in Australia, for example, as I said before, intellectual capacity of the individuals varies.
Yes.
Individual circumstances of their being brought up varies. So there are a lot of variations here. So you can't cater for every individual.
Okay.
But then what the government has done now, for example, they are saying for those who do not have the inclination to go to higher studies, into university, etc., they're saying they can provide vocational training that has been incorporated in the secondary school after 10.
Mm-hmm.
So they're providing that facility and trying to create that interest in the individuals. Society is not only needing neurosurgeons, but they need plumbers, they need masons, they need carpenters, they need, a whole range of electricians, you name it, welders, so on, drivers, all sorts of people we need to make it work, you see. You just can't have everyone being a neurosurgeon. Everybody says, I'm a neurosurgeon. What are you doing? I'm a neurosurgeon as well. So who's going to look after all the other stuff? So we've got that concept. Constantly, I think human beings must constantly strive to improve all the time, to improve their behavior, improve their systems, improve, the opportunities. It's not easy, It's not easy, but we must constantly be trying to improve. This is very important because we're not talking about this. We need to be, first of all, dissatisfied with what we've got. Without that dissatisfaction, we cannot find solution. So if you're all happy with the way we live, that's what we live,
Okay, so just to finish off now, you mentioned a very great point about how no matter how wealthy you are, at the end of the day, you leave with nothing. So the last question I really wanted to ask was, what would you urge the people out there who do have the capacity to help others to do? What would your real message to them be based on your experience, helping the community, giving legal advice to people despite them, not having the financial capability to go to a professional, voluntarily doing that. That's a very amazing thing that Mr. Benjamin does. So what would you really urge the people out there who have that capacity to do for others?
I think to support, look, for example, I've got a friend who says, look, I'm a businessman, I don't have the time to do what you're doing, but we'll support you, So a bit like that. There are a number of people who are doing all good things, and how these people who got the resources can support, Now, one of the problem in this country at the present time, it is the consistent cut to the legal aid, consistent cut by the state and the federal governments to the provision of legal aid for the vulnerable people. So with the result, the legal aid in New South Wales says, unless you are going to be locked up in the prison, then we will not support you. This is what we were told. So a lot of people are getting the raw end of the stick, so to speak, in the deal, because they go to the court without any legal assistance. Self-represented litigants, they get the very poor results. So the result now, what's happening is that our population, the jail is increasing. They are wanting to build more jails. So what a society. We should try and rehabilitate people. We should try and provide opportunity for these people to not to commit another crime, but okay, you punish them for some time, so there are so many things which are wrong that need to be fixed. I think.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks to Mr. Benjamin for finding the time out of his very busy schedule for joining us, and until next time, all the best.